Clitorati, welcome to our holiday reboot. We're here all December. We hear you, and one of our top episode topics this year was squirting. We have male sex and intimacy coach Caitlin V back in the studio to hear what she teaches her male students. Yeah, and you're welcome. Please welcome Caitlin V.
Woo, thank you. Yes. Happy to be back, friends.
Squirting 101 for realsies. Give us all the hot tips.
All right. Squirting mini-sode.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Do you want me to just dive in?
Yes.
Perfect. All
yes.
right.
How do you, yeah.
Hot off the top, squirting is not pee. And yes, almost all vulva-bodied human beings can squirt, even if you feel that you can't, even if you've tried and you can't. Squirting, the origin of squirt comes from a piece of the body called the urethral tube. It is often associated with or alongside the G-spot. And the liquid that squirt is actually made of, and this is the belief of Sherry Winston, who's a nurse and a female pleasure expert, wrote a great book called Female Anatomy of Pleasure. I think of all the things that discuss squirting, Sherry Winston's book is the best. And in it, she posits that the liquid that comes from squirt is actually drawn from our blood, and it is exchanged. The blood cells are removed from it, and liquid is the result is this sort of like white, watery liquid. Sometimes can be milky, and it sometimes can have a little pee in it. It does come through the urethra. Okay, those are like the top questions that the majority of people are going to want to know before we dive in. Why would you want to squirt? Why would your partner want you to squirt? Maybe you already have an answer in mind. Men typically want women to squirt because it's an ejaculation. It confirms that an orgasm happened. Women most often want to squirt, I think, because it feels good. It can certainly come in, it can come alongside a G-spot orgasm. It can happen independently of a G-spot orgasm. It can happen without an orgasm. It can happen without notice. But it certainly is a interesting sensation, and I think it is one that is worth exploring if that's something that you're interested in. And it's worth definitely not putting pressure on yourself to get there. I like to think of squirting more as like a journey than just a destination. The best way I have found to trigger squirting, the most reliable way to trigger squirting, is by thinking about squirting as the squirting is something that you should I would recommend introducing not early on in sexual play, but after there's been a fair amount of buildup and a fair amount of arousal. And the reason for that is that the vulva body has 5 different areas of erogenous tissue. These are erectile tissue, pardon me. Speed round, erectile tissue. And one of those pieces of erectile tissue is the urethral sponge, or again, often considered to be or associated with the G-spot. It is located about 1 to 2 inches on the inside of the vagina towards the front wall. So it's sort of, think about it almost as like the backside of the clitoris. And it does not appear until a significant amount of arousal has already happened, because it has to fill with blood because it's made out of erectile tissue. And so if the clitoris isn't filled with blood, and if the sort of the network of the clitoris, the legs of the clitoris, and the vestibular bulbs, which are now sort of considered part of the anatomy of the clitoris, haven't had a chance to fill with blood, chances are that the G-spot hasn't either, and the urethral sponge and the G-spot are not going to even be feelable. They're not going to be able to be felt by your fingers. These need to fill with blood in order to even be felt by a finger. Mm-hmm. So once arousal has occurred, I like to recommend, if you're multi-orgasmic, have an orgasm, get really, really juicy, get really wet. If you're not multi-orgasmic, also great. Maybe edge yourself, which is getting close to orgasm but not going over the edge. And then search for the G-spot with your fingers first, confirm that it is there and where it is located, or have your partner do that. Tell them that they are looking for a little bump of flesh, a little ridge that feels a little hard and like a little bit like a bean and is distinct from the rest of the tissue around it. And then essentially, the best way to get to squirting is by stimulating this little bump, this ridge. The ways that you stimulate it may vary. It will definitely vary. Even different times of the month, it might feel better to be stimulated in this way or that way. It might like more pressure or more movement, an up and down movement, a windshield wipers movement, a tapping movement. Play around with it. One of the best ways to do this with if you're doing this for yourself, is not to use a finger because it can get kind of tiring. And if you have any wrist or mobility issues, it can be very challenging to get this angle, but you can certainly do so with a vibrator, usually a U shape or a J shape, or a toy that is really famous for squirting orgasms. It's called the N-Joy wand. I don't have an affiliate. It's just, this is the toy. It's about, I think it's a 7-pound metal wand with a ball on the end. But it's very easy to keep and maintain pressure on this spot because it is a heavy object and it doesn't move around very easily. There's
Lindsay's ordering one now.
Plenty of sex toy companies
What's the website
that make
again?
Yeah. I don't have Enjoy. It's also like a great tool to keep next to your bed in case there's like a home intruder, because you could seriously mess somebody up with this thing.
Dual purpose sex toys. I love those.
Yeah, I had to get it, babe, for protection. All right. So
Slash weapon.
Exactly. So once we've located this little nub, this urethral sponge, the reason I don't love calling it the G-spot is because G stands for Dr. Grafenberger, who was a male who just decided that this was like him putting his flag in the moon, like, this is mine, and I named it. And I just like, I don't feel like a man should really have claim to the G-spot. So urethral sponge, urethral tube. Once you've located it, you've pleasured it. I think if you're with a partner, the very best way to trigger squirting is to have them place 2 fingers. They could be the middle 2 fingers. They can be the first 2 onto the spot, and to begin to move back and forth with a fair amount of force and pressure and speed. And the reason for this is that the G-spot, this spot on the body, can take a ton of stimulation. And for most people, it can actually take a lot of pressure. It's not super nerve ending rich like the clitoris. And so you can pretty much come at it with a good deal of pressure. And the reason that, and I would recommend that they do this right before you are going to orgasm, when you're very close to orgasming, because it's going to take a lot of wrist strength and a lot of forearm strength. And actually, it's even best if you're kind of like moving from your upper arm, keeping your wrist very still and very solid. And then you go at, or have them go at your sponge or G-spot, this nub, until you squirt. And that is the quickest way that I can describe it. That is like the rough and dirty. And I would recommend that they continue to keep that pressure and keep that pace until you have squirted, and through the liquid, it can come out as a trickle. It can come out as a fire hose. Depending on where their wrist is located, their hand may actually be blocking it. So it might just come out as liquid, and then they notice it in their palm. And I would have them continue to move until the liquid has basically slowed down or stopped, or the person who's receiving is telling them to stop, because it can be a lot of sensation. And do not be surprised if when you squirt for the first time or the 11th time, a lot of emotion comes up too, because I have found this was the case for me. There was tons of just built up tension from never being released, never having squirted until the first time that I did, which was using this technique, by the way. And when I did, I was like laughing, crying, just the whole range of emotions. And then I had this huge rush of pleasure and joy. And then when I like kind of came back down, I turned to him and I said, "Hey, could you do that again?"
Nice.
Amazing.
So
my
I've
God.
talked about like I like 15 to 20 minutes to warm up before I have sex. And one of the things that I do, and this is actually a question, because I'm like, am I squirting or am I peeing? Not sure. Because it happens within like 2 minutes. I'll use my Hitachi wand. I sit on the toilet and I like literally push everything out so that I can relax fully when I have sex, and I don't have to worry about like peeing or like squirting everywhere or shitting on the bed. So is that squirt?
That sounds more like pee.
Okay.
But I would do the way that you could analyze that is by just doing it into a cup and looking for, does it look like, smell like, appear like urine?
Because it's definitely a pleasurable release. Like it doesn't happen like immediately, but that could also be pee.
Peeing can also be pleasurable.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's fun though. I like that. I want to try that ritual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that too. Well,
There you go.
Clitorati, this was a quick and fast part of our holiday Take Care of You challenge. We know that the holidays can be very stressful, so if you can either create squirting for yourself or with your partner for all the holidays, we highly recommend it. You do this, write into us, let us know how it goes, and we'll see you on the other juicy side. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.